Hello, I'm Felicity Cohen. I'm so excited to introduce you to my Wellness Warriors podcast. For over 20 years, I've been a passionate advocate for helping thousands of Australians find solutions to treating obesity and health-related complications through surgical intervention and holistic managed care. My podcast is dedicated to all the people, past, present and future, who have helped shape my journey and continue to inspire me to work consistently to achieve a healthier Australia in both adults and future generations. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to my Wellness Warriors podcast. Today I have with me, this is really exciting and something totally new for me, Kate Surman, who is here from the AFL Women's League. Is that what I say?
Yeah.
AFL Women's.
Whatever you want. AFLW, AFL Women's.
AFLW. And it's so exciting to have you here. So thank you so much for making the time to come in today.
Thank you.
I guess you've got a pretty hectic schedule. What does a normal day look like for an AFL player? What do you do every day?
So AFLW is not full-time, so it's part-time and it's only a 6-month contract. So at the moment we're in our off-season. But our off-season, you still got to put the work in. So at the moment, we've got a winter program. So we're not actually getting paid, but we're doing it because we want to be better. So we're at the club just 2 days a week. But we're in there at the start. We'll get there at maybe 3 or 4. Do our prehab, all of our like physio and all of that, and then we'll be on track at about 5:30, and then we'd be finishing off track at about 6:37, and then we go into the gym, and then we're home late at night. So we finish gym about probably around about 8:30, and that's just in the off season at the moment in our winter program. So we're not actually getting paid at the moment, but in season what we're doing is I think we're contracted for about 15 hours, but that's from when we start with the coaches to when we finish. So a lot of times we get there a lot earlier, do our prehab, all the physio, all the chats with the coaches, and then we start and then go from there. And during the season we end up there till sometimes 10 o'clock at night, and that's 5 days a week, sometimes 4 days.
Wow.
So it's a lot of work.
I'm going to come back to everything that is involved in being part of the AFLW, but I'd love to start with who you are and where you first started. Now I know your nickname's Spud. Tell me, where did that come from?
So when I was little, I used to I'm talking like a baby. So I used to sit there and stare at the TV. So couch potato Spud, get it? And then it just stuck through all my sporting career. So I played basketball as a junior, and then just through there it just stuck, and all my friends call me Spud at home, to the point where I called a friend for an athlete's carnival, and I was just chatting to her on the phone, and this is like the phone on the wall phone, not a mobile phone with little cords on near the phone. And I was talking to her for about a good 10 minutes because I said, it's Kate, and she's just like, I don't know who Kate is, but I was just chatting. And then she finally realised that it was me and I'm Spud. So a lot of people just know me as Spud and probably wouldn't actually even know my real name.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So your colleague players, do they call you Kate or do they call you Spud?
They call me Spud.
Oh, I love
or
that.
Variations of Spud.
Okay.
I'll just go with whatever. I'm not too fussed.
So let's start with a little bit about your history and what took you to where you're at now. You grew up in Ballarat.
Yeah, good old B-Rat. Nice and warm place, Ballarat. So I grew up in Ballarat and I played a lot of basketball up until I was about 18, 19. And then I quit and started at uni, and then as I went to exercise sports science, and then through that I did a lot of sports training and all of that type of stuff. But then, I never really thought about playing football at all. I'd always really enjoyed football as a kid, and was quite good at it with terms footy. Did you play term footy at all?
Of course.
Yeah, you play your little term footy. I think it's around about term 3. You'd play footy in the wet and the cold with all the girls. So anyway, finished exercise sports science. And was with the whole sports training stuff, I wanted to go and be a physio. So I actually moved to Queensland in Brizzy and did my Masters of Physio. And that's when I kind of was actually I wouldn't mind playing footy here. And I looked up University of Queensland football, but I just never really went and played. That's probably one of my bigger regrets, is that I didn't start playing football earlier, because I'm about 21, 22 here. Anyway, I moved to the sunny coast as a physio, and I'm sitting around kind of 25, 26, and this is when AFLW first came into it birthed AFLW, and one of my best friends was playing for Carlton, and I went down and watched, and watching that was pretty cool. So I decided to go play for Maroochydore Roos, and next minute I'm getting picked up by the Suns, and here I am now. Yeah, at the age of 29 now.
That's an incredible, amazing journey. So you're still working as a physiotherapist? Yeah,
so that's the tricky thing about playing AFLW is it's quite difficult to sustain a full-time job and play football, and I think for myself giving 100% to both. So when I moved from the sunny coast, I was working at quite a high level sports clinic. And then I moved down to the Gold Coast and just realised I couldn't sustain private practice. It was a bit too full on. So I'm now moved into aged care, and I have an absolute ball. It's more the fact that I can have fun, and it's a little bit less stressful, and I can clock in, clock out. So I work 30 hours a week with football, which is still getting to the point where it's maybe a bit too much, but I'm handling it.
Just your 6 months of when you're under contract, you're working 30 hours plus you're doing all of your training and you're playing and everything else.
I would say we'd probably do about 60 hours really. So when you look at it, you're doing your 30 hours per week for your job, but then, I think you are only contracted to 15 hours during the pre-season, but you're putting in a lot more work than that. And that's just the reality of AFLW. You just, you have to, where we're at.
It must be so hard to find an employer who also offers that kind of flexibility for you during the season when you're on. How do you actually manage that kind of relationship when you've got travel in good times? How does that all work?
Look, I'm pretty lucky because as a physio, it's quite a flexible career, and I didn't know that before I started. So, geez, I'm lucky, aren't I? So I was just lucky enough that with private practice, you obviously just book people in based on when you got your training times, and then you just, once you find that the season's ahead of time, you can just block out your days and stuff like that and take annual leave. But I've been really, really lucky. All of my employees have been super, super flexible with me, and I've been pretty transparent to them when they offer me a job that football is one of my main priorities. And so far I've been pretty lucky, and unlucky though, there's a few people in our team that struggle. They've gone from really high paying jobs to then barely getting a job because it's only 6 months of the year. So saying that, for 6 months of the year I'm only going to be half the time, it doesn't really work.
So how do they offset that? How do they manage? What do they do? What's the compromise?
That's the hardest thing is so one of my good friends, she just kind of job hopped for a while, and now she's lucky enough a friend came up and started a business, so she's able to work with him. But then it's obviously not where her major skill set lies, and obviously her income has dropped significantly. But we're both lucky enough to have really supportive partners that help along the way as well. Yeah.
And there are players who've got families, who have children already?
We did. We did have. So Sam Virgo had 2 kids, or she does have 2 kids. And it was very interesting. When we went away to WA, we were actually in a hub for a while because of COVID. Her family came along, which was really, really lovely, and we got to spend a lot of time with her family. But there was a few health problems while we were away, and poor Virgo had a bit of trouble and had to spend a lot of time with her family. So it's just the way it is, I guess, with football. You've got football as your priority, but I think really your family is 100% more your priority, isn't it? But for me, I don't have a family just yet, so footy's my priority at the moment.
Well, even in a relationship with your partner, there are still challenges when you've got to live that lifestyle where some of the time you're away. Obviously, you both deal well with that.
I think it's a bit of a balancing act. I haven't quite figured it out just yet. I decided to take our club season off because I need to spend more time with him. Because he's a New Zealander, so he doesn't quite get AFL as much, but he loves watching me play and he loves supporting me, and I've never seen his face, so he smiles so big when he watches me play. But I definitely know that it takes a fair bit of a toll on him because I'm getting home late at night and leaving early in the morning to go to work. So he definitely misses me a lot. So I have to spend and make sure I like pretty much lock in my diary time to like to spend time with him. Yeah.
Really important to understand how to manage that whole big juggle.
Yeah. I think it's just you got to learn it. You got to go through some hard stuff to be able to learn. Okay, well, what do I need? And I think everyone's different though, aren't they? Like some people are happy to spend time by themselves and they're not too needy, whereas you got people who are super needy and you got to spend more time with them. Brett's kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Sounds like it works really well for you. So tell me a little bit about what you've seen as the change in AFLW since 2017 with the first season right through to now. What are some of the changes in the growth, in the acceptance, and you know, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so AFLW, you know, when we first started, I think we had 7 teams. So now we've got, I think is there 14 teams, and looking to build in the next couple of years to even more teams. So obviously you see that there's more teams across and there's more games. Yeah. But what the main thing I see is just the talent. You know, the talents and the skill is, like from year one, I mean, when I first started 2 years ago, I watched it, because I didn't watch too much of it in the first year. I watched year 1 to the previous year, and it was such a different game, and the skill level was just up. And that's probably the main thing that I see when you're looking at just pure football. And then I think, in all, like I think there's more people, more girls and more women are actually participating in AFL, and particularly on the Gold Coast. I think there's been a 33% increase in girls playing AFLW on the coast. Amazing. Compared to 10% with the males. So AFL is really starting to heat up on the Gold Coast, which is awesome.
And I'm sure that's got a lot to do with your team. The perception and what they see definitely has given rise to that they see that this is actually a possibility, that they can actually have that semi-professional football career, and hopefully eventually it will match up with the men's. I guess that's the long-term goal, is that, you know, this will also be a professional league for women. Is that what you would like to see happen? Yeah,
I think it's getting, like, you know, we're in the 6th year now, and I think it's getting really close to that. You know, like I said, like I'm working 30 hours a week at the moment, and you know, we're doing a fair bit of training, and I'm getting close to the point where I nearly can't do both. So that's like, it sucks for a lot of people who are working full time, but it's awesome in itself that the quality and the amount of, I guess, exposure for women is huge, to the point where it can get to full time. We're looking at, in the next couple of years, I think by 2026, I think it'd be getting close to nearly full time. I'll be retired though, because I'm going to have a kid at some stage, and I don't really want to go back after that. But I do think that very soon in the future, and I think a bit earlier than what they had planned, it's going to be full time. But the only thing with that is the salaries have to be up there, and we have to make sure that it's still popular. Hence why we're starting a little bit earlier this year.
So what else do you think has contributed to the attention that the AFLW now gets, especially here on the Gold Coast, and why there's so many more women playing and younger girls? Do you have a program where you're getting out there in schools? How are you influencing other young women to kind of look at this as a potential for them?
Yeah, look, I think firstly, a lot of people actually were really interested in AFL beforehand, but there was just no avenues. So a lot of people grew up playing, you know, like your term sport footy, but then what would end up happening is, you know, you'd go and play, and then you have to choose between a sport, and then you're like, well, there's no future in this sport, so I'm going to go down this route. And I think what you're seeing now is that there is a future in AFL. So you're like, oh, well, I love playing footy, so I'm going to go down the football route. That's what I think, and that's where I probably would have sat. I would have played football at a younger age, and I would have pursued it, rather than going down, I guess, the basketball route, which didn't end up going anywhere. But what we're doing is, I think just us being here on the Gold Coast, and just the Gold Coast having an AFLW team is huge. I think that in itself is probably the biggest, I guess, marketing tool for AFL on the coast, because then they've got someone to look up to, and that's huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you're definitely, you're the icons of the
Yeah.
sport, and you're the women that these young girls are looking up to, and then they start to see, well, maybe that could be me.
Yeah, 100%. I just think of like me when I was a kid. I used to like look up to, you got stars like, as a basketball, like, Michael Jackson, Lauren Jackson and Michelle Timms, and, they were playing professional sport. Whereas, for footy, there was absolutely no one playing. There was no AFLW. And I think the cool thing is I actually went into a school recently, and they asked us, I was with our captain, the men's captain, Jared Witts, and I had these kids asking me questions, and one of them asked me, how long have you been playing football for? And he was just like, I think he might have said like 15 years or something like that. And I was like, oh, look, Matt, like 3 or 4 years. And he's like, and I said, look, do you realise that AFLW wasn't a thing, 5-6 years ago? And they were like godsmacked. Like they were like, really? There was no AFLW? So for these kids, it is the norm.
That's fantastic. So they don't remember a time when it wasn't actually part of what they would see every day.
Yeah, and that's the coolest thing. AFLW is now ingrained in the culture of AFL, and even in men's change rooms. Like you've got these draftees coming in, they don't know what it's like not to have women in the club, which is super cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations, because you're a big part of that.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
What role do you play in actually going and talking in schools and having some kind of influence on children?
Yeah, so obviously with COVID, it's been a little bit limited. But when we had that little break in the COVID restrictions, we'd go in and run clinics. I went up, there was supposed to be a game in NT, and it was, I think it was Gold Coast was it Carlton or Hawthorn, I think? And they were, we went up for that, and we went to actually all the AFL Oz kicks. And it was brilliant, like hanging out with all the kids and running the little clinics. And again, those kids didn't realise that there's women in, like they didn't realise what it's like to not have women in AFL. And you got these little girls running around, and even at the little schools. So we went into the schools and participated in all the Oz kick stuff. So we're lucky enough that now, particularly on the Gold Coast, AFL is like, I think it is a term sport, and there's actually subjects for AFL. Which is really cool, and there's a girls and a boys team.
That's fabulous, and I think they need more of it, and the more that we're doing to assist in making sure that our kids are active and healthy and doing amazing things, and looking at pathways for sport if that's their inclination, but also that we're just promoting an active and healthy lifestyle for kids overall. I think it's so important, and we need to be doing more and more of it. Yeah,
and I think it's not even being healthy from physical wise. There's a program that the Suns run, and it is kind of pioneered by one of my good friends, Laura Renz, and it's called Play to Your Strengths. Have you ever done that test where you're finding out your personality characteristics, traits? Have you ever seen that?
I have.
You have, and you got to you can do it online, and it's I think there's many characteristics you can go through. It's quite well researched, and we actually go into school, like the kids learn about different characteristics based on what their score was. You've got kids who they may have marked as number 1 for gratitude, and then they have to kind of talk about how that they show gratitude in their life. But we're using us as like poster people to say, hey, I'm zesty is a high one for me. So I talked about me being zesty, and then the kids saw that, and then they have to do exactly the same thing, and we came in and like watched them present to us, and it was just amazing. Like it's just cool, like teaching kids that there's more, that we do more than just football, which is really cool, if that makes sense. Kind of went a little bit here, there and everywhere, but Play to Your Strengths is the program running schools. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's a great message.
It's really cool, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that there was a moment when you were in Western Australia, in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
When was that? And tell me a little bit about what was that like for you, and how long were you there for?
It was the coolest thing ever. So we went, I can't remember what round it was, but obviously due to COVID, we had like a changing draw. So we didn't know where we were going. And obviously we've got West Coast and Freo that are in our league. Yeah. So the easiest way was for us to stay over there because WA, with all of the COVID stuff, they were being quite strict. So the easiest thing for us was to go over there, stay for a week, play Freo, and then the weekend then play West Coast. So we were lucky enough to actually get kind of the AFL put us up in apartments, and we got to kind of live the full-time athlete life for a while, which is really cool, and it was a really good insight to like how the men are and what the future of AFLW is going to be like. And yeah, it was really nice. We got to focus on our recovery, we got to focus on what we were eating. We actually all just got to spend a lot of time together and really build on the culture that we're trying to build at the club. So it was really, really good. We didn't get the wins, but I think we got a lot out of it, more than just football.
What does that culture look like for you, and what are some of the things that are so important for you at the Suns, for your team? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for me, I think culture is the main thing. I think that's how you become successful, is having a good culture. Every team has good players, but it's what culture is the thing that's actually going to make you successful. And at the club, us being the women's, we have our club values, we do, but we, as a women's group, we have our own as well. But we've only been in the club for 2 years, so we're really trying to figure out what our values are. Like, I don't think we could really straight away pinpoint them. So, and we've had a whole change in staff and coaching and different players. So we're just in the process of figuring all that out. But for me, I think trust is huge. I think family, which is one of our main, what do you call it? Like a core value.
That you're respecting each other's families, and how that becomes part of who you are.
And we all become as a family at the club, and we treat each other, with respect. They're really, really two big ones for me. But we're not sure where our values as a girls team, where we're going to be at, because we're kind of just at the beginning again. We've had a big changeover with staffing and different coach and different players now, so we'll create that all from the start of September 1, when we all get back together officially. Yeah.
So do you think that's difficult to build that camaraderie and that culture in the 6 months that you're not actually engaged in your season? How do you actually then connect with the other team members? Obviously, many of them would have become your friends by now, but how do you actually maintain that camaraderie?
It is hard, isn't it? I think it's because a lot of us all come from different areas, and we all have moved down here. So we're all kind of living here. We don't know anyone else. So we spend so much time together. I actually find it really hard for the people who do live here for 6 months and then they go home and then they come back. I find that they find it the hardest. Whereas us as a group, we all hang out with each other because it's all we know. Like all my best friends here are all the girls I play with. And we don't just talk about football. We go, football is a big part of our lives, but we definitely all have common interests because we do play football. And when you play football, you always find that you have other interests as well. So, it's more just the people who are living externally that come in, come out, that I think it's the hardest to kind of stay connected.
Yeah. What do you love most about living on the Gold Coast?
The weather, and the beaches. I've actually moved. I lived in Nobbies for the first 2 years when I lived here, just at Nobbies Beach. Pretty lucky, 1 street back from the beach. I was very, very lucky. Oh, and Nobbies is such a beautiful area. Good coffee. Shout out to Canvas. Canvas coffee is really good.
Fabulous.
Yeah, have you been to Canvas?
I have.
Yeah, and they're super lovely. But I've only just moved. I've moved to Tweed. So, I count that as Gold Coast. I love the beaches. I think the lifestyle. I love the chill lifestyle. I like the fact that everyone gets up early and goes to bed relatively early, because that's what I'm like. Cruisy little bars, and there's always something to do. And when you compare that to the Sunny Coast is beautiful, one of my favourite places, but there's always something to do on the Gold Coast, and that's one of them. And obviously footy's here as well.
So have you taken up any new hobbies, any sports that are more kind of Gold Coast sport that you haven't done before because you were living in a different
Yeah, I haven't done anything different. I did surf a bit when I lived on the Sunshine Coast because I lived in Coolum, but I haven't started anything new. I probably am surfing a lot less because I have a lot less time, but I really need to get back into the water because it's super, super fun. But yeah, there's nothing else that I've started.
Are there any sports that you're actually not allowed to do because they might be too high risk or potentially cause injury that you're not allowed to expose yourself to as a football player?
Yeah, I would say there would be, but I don't think I'd really put myself in that anyway. Like I think something like water skiing, I think like wakeboard, I think anything that's really high speed stuff we're not allowed to do.
Are you allowed to ski?
I don't think so.
I don't think you are.
But look, well, I think there was a few things with the men's team. I'm not the Gold Coast, but I think there's been some few injuries in, extreme sports that a few of the players have had to
avoid them.
Correct. But yeah, other than that, but then I think technically surfing is sometimes even extreme sport. So, just use your common sense, really.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to skydive, I'd probably skydive. But I'm lucky my contract's only 6 months, so you slowly can do it in the off season, can't you?
Well, that's going to have to change when you become a professional player.
Exactly, it's true. Yeah.
So what about lockdown? Did you have a period where you were actually in a lockdown space, apart from the Western Australian bubble kind of moment?
We didn't have anything that was any different to what you guys were going through. But the hardest thing that we probably found football-based was access to the club. Because obviously the men were there and they didn't want to cross-contaminate us because we're out in the community. Yeah. So we lost access to club facilities, which is huge because that's where all the gym is, all the fields, all the coaches. And that was probably the hardest. So what me and my friends did was in our backyard, and obviously we kept it only just to the one visitor when the rules were on. We just did workouts in our backyard and run around, and we went for kicks ourselves. But I think that's probably the hardest thing that we went through was just not being able to do things at the club, and that's where you really interact the most at the club.
So I've heard that you took up the saxophone, or were you already a saxophonist before?
So I wouldn't call me a saxophonist. Is that even a word?
It is.
It is a word.
Yes, if you play the saxophone, you're a saxophonist.
Okay.
So that's you, right?
That's me. I can play tequila.
Oh, fabulous.
That's about it. I played it when I was my fingers were too, because I have really, really tiny hands. Like my hands are...
For a footballer, you've got really small hands.
They're ridiculously tiny. It's not fair. So when it's slippery and the ball goes that way, that's because I have tiny hands. So when I was, I think I was in grade 5 or grade 6, I wanted to play the saxophone, but my hands are too small, and so they made me play the clarinet. But now looking back, I really reckon they just didn't have a saxophone for me to hire out. So they made me, learn the clarinet. But once I got a bit older and I guess my hands grew, I learnt the saxophone for a year. And that's when I learned how to play tequila and all the basic stuff. But I didn't kind of continue to play it for any longer period, just purely because it's too loud. But I did go back last year. I did learn the Gold Coast Suns theme song on...
Oh, I love that.
...the saxophone, and I made up my own notes and everything. I haven't showed anyone though.
Have you filmed it? We need to get a copy of that and download it.
I have filmed little bits of it. I'm not sure if I've still got it on my phone because I was going to send it to AFLW because they wanted me to do it, but I just never went through with it, because I couldn't get it 100% perfect. But I actually learnt it because one of the other girls, Lauren Bella, our big tall ruck, she can play the trumpet. And with the Gold Coast Suns theme song, it goes do 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 do, and she could do that bit. And then I was going to run with the,
perfect,
the Gold Coast Suns theme song. But that's maybe future activities. Hey, Jill?
Next season, I think we need a copy of that.
We'll try. I'll see. Okay. I'll see if I can get Lauren Bella to do that.
What's your own personal philosophy around health and well-being? And, is your diet different when you're in season as opposed to off season? What changes for you, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I think I've always lived really, really healthy. I find that I function better when I eat well and I exercise. Yeah. There was a period of time when I was younger and I was probably a little bit more obsessive with it, and I think a lot of people go through that when they're exercising, where I'd have a day off extra that I wouldn't normally, and I'd kind of freak out. And I think a lot of people go through that. Whereas now, you know, I am very just really consistent with my exercise even in the off season. Like I need it for my mental health. When it comes to diet wise though, I think you can have anything, you can eat anything, but it's more just moderation. That's probably what you teach, is more that there's no bad foods. There's just, it's more
bad habits.
Correct.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I grew up. There are no bad foods, only bad habits.
Yeah, because then you just, and I think particularly with society these days, like there's so much pressure, particularly on females, to eat a certain way and to look a certain way. Yeah. And for us as footballers, I'm actually a lot bigger as a footballer than I was not being a footballer, because the reality is I need to be this way to perform. Yeah. You know, if I wasn't playing football, I probably wouldn't have as much muscle. I wouldn't, you know, be as, I guess, I'm not chunky or anything, but I'm definitely a solid.
Yeah.
I'm like definitely more of that mesomorph build. But yeah, once you learn that, you know, this is the best way to perform and you look like this because that's what you need to perform.
Absolutely.
And really be super positive on, you know, I need this and this helps me be the best I can be. So I think once we all learn that, and even men and women, like once society knows that and learns that, then I think we'll be so much better as a country and a world. Hey.
And healthy food to you, is it fresh food? Not packaged out of a packet. Do you do a lot of cooking? Have you got a favourite dish that you cook?
I wouldn't say I love cooking. I like cooking. I love eating. But my favourite food would have to be, I love Mexican. Anything Mexican's really good. I think everyone loves Mexican, don't you? Yeah, you like Mexican?
I love Mexican.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like you, I love food too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've really, over the last couple of years, I run out of time to cook, so I kind of have the same thing nearly every day. But Mexican would be my go-to. Obviously, my nickname's Spud, so I love a good hot chip. I know it's not healthy, but moderation. You know, sweet potato fries is probably the best.
Delicious.
Yeah, sometimes I can't even have one because then I lose my moderation, but that's okay. It's okay, yeah. But even going back to like in season and training and pre-season, we actually have to eat more. I think a lot of girls in training don't eat enough. So I think that's where we all go wrong, is we don't eat enough.
Yeah, well, you need that energy supply, and especially if you've built more body muscle, obviously you need the fuel to function better and to perform well. So with your background, obviously that's something that you'd be able to share with others as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I think too, being the physio as well, there's a lot of injury risks with not eating well and not eating enough. Particularly like stress related stuff, and then you're even looking at, you're going deep into your menstrual cycle and stuff like that. And we're really lucky. We learn about all this stuff and how your period relates to your performance and what you should be eating at certain times. Yeah. And there's a lot more studies on that now, which is really cool. Yeah,
really interesting.
Well, because all the research was done on men, you know, and we're different to men. Yeah.
Amazing. So you're coming into the season shortly. Your season starts in September?
Well, our pre-season starts. So we're in pre-season at the moment. Okay. Our pre-season starts in September and our season starts in December.
Okay. So then what does the next 6 months look like for you in that lead-up period?
Exhaustion.
Yeah.
Fatigue. But a lot of fun. So we'll be, training. Well, we've got on-field 4 days a week and gym 3 days a week. So a lot of hours spent at the club and a lot of exhaustion, a lot of sweating because it's going to be really hot, and it's always really hot because we play in the summer because the men play in the winter. Okay. So the idea is to be able to get more exposure for us rather than, competing with the men. Well, same thing with, there's no sport during that time. Yeah. So us as AFLW, we kind of have to sacrifice a lot because it's all through Christmas, which is not a lot of fun, but it is what it is. Good for the game.
What are you looking forward to most about the next season, and have you set some goals? What is it that you would most like to see happen next season?
Look, this is keep it simple. I'd love a win. That'd be good. I'd love to sing the song this year. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I think we set our sights high, and we're looking at us as a team. I think we've got a team that's good enough to make finals. Even though we didn't win a game last year, our first year, the year before, we were the best new team, and we made finals the year before. So I'd really like to see us make finals. For me personally, I'm moving more into more of a forward role. So I played a bit of mid forward, and now I'm starting to move more into forward. So I'd love to kick some snags. That's always good. So snags a goal. You got that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I'd love to kick a goal. But yeah, for mine is mostly now is that I think I want success for us as a team. Yeah, that's probably the most important, and for the club as well, because the club's still only a young club, and success hasn't really been there for the club. And I think us as a women's team are a little bit closer to success than the men, just purely because like AFLW is just like this. You know, anyone could win in a year, whereas the men's just kind of slowly building. And I think if we can create success for the Gold Coast Suns and for the Gold Coast, it'd be awesome.
Oh, fantastic. It's wonderful for our city. It's great what you do. I think you're an amazing role model for other young women coming through the sport, and you know, hopefully we're going to see a lot more of it. And it'd be great to see eventually one day professional AFLW would be awesome as well, and hopefully that's the direction that you're taking it in.
Well, it definitely will be professional. I have no doubt it'll be 100% professional in the next definitely 10 years.
Very exciting. I have one final question that I like to ask all of my guests when they come on the Wellness Warriors podcast. What does wellness mean to you?
Well, I think wellness is it's when you're looking at physical and mental, it's just making sure that they both tie up and how they both interconnect. I think if physically you're feeling good, mentally you're feeling good, and vice versa. So I think that's the wellness of all of that is really important, but it's also the wellness of just not you, but also the people around you as well. Because you know, when you go and say hello to someone and they're Debbie Downer, your wellness goes down. So it's really important that your physical, mental match, but also you're helping everyone else around you so that you stay up as well.
No wonder you're such a great team player. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Wellness Warriors podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you online with us. If you enjoyed the series, please leave your review, subscribe and follow, and we look forward to sharing many more stories with you in the future.